Okay.
Right, please, Curiosita, your floor is yours.
All right, so what I thought I'd do, because I did, you know, when you come to something like this, you do lots and lots of research, and you really think about it, and you look at all the statistics, and I thought there are so many statistics, and I'm assuming a lot of very academic people who all know exactly where to look for statistics. So I thought what I would do today is tell you a little bit about the Access story and what we believe, where we have done well. If you want to know where we've done badly, there's question time, and I am unbelievably honest about things that have gone wrong. So at the moment, I think there are a lot of changes in management. We were talking now about how we've gone from the militaristic type of management where you gave an instruction, expected it to be followed, and management must have been easy in the 60s and 70s and maybe the 50s. I think it's changed a lot. And we have to keep it. To me, it's a moving target. Just when you think you've got it right, you've got your whole team together, everybody's working extremely well, something comes in. When Access had its 30th birthday, we used the pearl as our symbol for the year. And we've thought about that a lot since then, because to be successful at anything, whether it's making a pearl or making a business, you have to have grit to start it, because that's how a pearl starts. Without grit, there is no pearl. So not everybody in your business is going to fit. And the point really comes down to how you make the people that don't fit not be destructive in your environment. So to create a kind of ecosystem where people that are completely productive, or those high productivity, low maintenance people, don't you just love the one that works for you?
Yes.
Because we've also just got one. It's not me, but we have got one. So I think that there's a lot of cliches about management, and I think that management today has changed. One of the things I keep telling my managers is that if management was easy, you wouldn't have jobs. The whole reason that you earn more than the people working for you, most of them do, is because it's tough, and you have to think about it all the time. It never becomes easy. There's never a day that goes by where everything goes according to plan. So a crucial part of understanding our business has been the anonymous survey. I assume that a lot of you do surveys that give you temperature, measure the culture. The one that we used under my previous holding company was the Barrett survey. And Barrett measures levels of entropy. We consistently, for the 5 years we were within the BCX Telecom group while they were running the Barrett survey, had the lowest entropy levels. What we did in year one, when they came back to us with a list of items that were important to our staff, we took those and we built them into our performance management system. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what we've done with performance management at Access is we looked at all the different systems out there and we said we don't like this. When do we find out what somebody doesn't like about working at Access? Not in a performance appraisal, in the exit interview.
Yes. Right.
So we decided to create an exit interview as our appraisal. And that's how we started. And what we've done is we call it the expectations model. And within your first month at Access, you are supposed to go through that 4 times with your line manager. And what it is what were your expectations on day one? When you got your first salary at the end of the first month, is that what you were expecting to get in your pay packet? Were you expecting to spend more time with management? Are you being trained properly? Is management delivering? Is the company delivering to you? So that's the first thing. What are your expectations? Then we sit down and say, these are ours. Yes, you've come to work on time. Yes, you've done what we expected you to do. But actually, that's all. And so part of that is we then delivered into that expectations model. I took Maslow and I delivered and put together a hierarchy of what we think you should be doing to get from, yes, you come to work on time, you're punctual, you're doing your job, to you're a visionary, you're strategic, you're adding value. At different levels on that hierarchy are things like where you become a leader, where you're a mentor. Are you a member of a team? Are you contributing? One of our core values is knowledge becomes wisdom when it is shared. It does come a little bit of a quote from T.S. Eliot, if you've read any of his books.
Yes.
But it is a very important part of our business, is that if you know something, you do not lose by sharing it, you gain. And so we try and create a mantra around what we're doing every single day. So we've put a whole lot of different things into place. So self-actualization and being a visionary to us are very similar, because when you get to that level, you're going to be an engaged employee. Now, people can be committed without being engaged, and I'm not going to go through the chicken and the pig, you all probably know the story, but there is a difference between committed. I have got staff who are absolutely committed. They come to work at 8 o'clock, their heads are down, they walk out at 5 o'clock. They do exactly what we ask of them. But are they strategic? Absolutely not. Are they engaged? No. When they walk out of the office, they stop working. Engagement is a totally different thing for us. Engagement is something which is intangible, it is difficult to teach. Most companies that are really thinking about this today try and hire people who have got that engagement, they can see it in their eyes, they can see the twinkle, they can feel the passion in the interview. That whole interview process, to me, has become more and more important in terms of managing people effectively. If you hire people in an interview process on the first interview, in an hour's interview, and you think that it's going to work out, I think you've got to change that whole thing. To me, it's from when they walk up the stairs. How do they engage in reception? I never hire anybody without asking the receptionist what she thought. Because if they weren't friendly in reception, why are they going to be nice to me after 6 months? If people don't make eye contact with us when they're walking down the corridor, are they engaged? And we're looking for engagement. We want people to be on our path. So that's a huge part of what we do, is having that, getting people involved as quickly as possible, understanding the culture. So inculcating the culture into the business, to me, has to come from the top. It's got to be about me. I can't walk down the corridor and not greet people and expect people to greet me as a simple story. But I also have to understand different cultures have different ways of behaving. And we've got to understand everybody's different cultures. So we've put together a whole lot of initiatives around that. So when we talk about how people integrate with each other, managers, for me, there are two ways of managers learning. They go to become an academic, they do an MBA, and they do a certain amount of management training on that, or they go for short courses. What I noticed was that most people learn it, but they don't practice it. And to me, it's about practicing. So what we introduced at Access, it's probably, I've been there 16 years, probably 15 years ago, was Management 101 training. And I sat down and I created, over a period of time, it took me about a year or two, we run that, it's a 24 module program, we run it every 2 years, once a month for all the senior managers. And what it does is it covers things like ethics, decision making. So there's a module in each one. Sometimes we move away from modules, sometimes we don't do a particular module because it doesn't feel relevant anymore. But we cover that, and so our managers are constantly having to have the conversations about, and the things, we go through very mundane stuff like how to get the cow out the ditch, which you've probably all seen that story as well. But those are important stories, because people need to understand decision-making processes. I've used Susan Scott's book a lot, Fierce Conversations, and her decision tree, because I really like the idea of people thinking about the relevance and the importance of their decision. Is it a leaf decision which isn't going to impact anybody, or is it a root decision where if you make that decision and it's a bad one, the whole business is going to fall apart? So we have those posters around our office, and it's something that we talk about regularly in our Management 101. So I started with Management 101, and then I thought, okay, well, I'm talking to the executives and the senior leaders. What about the rest of the management? So we then took it down to Management 102. And then a few years after that, I said, okay, so we're training managers. What about the staff? We're leaving out the people who actually are interacting with our clients. How do we bring that to them? So we then created what we called Access 101, where the line managers are reintroducing the concepts we've learned to anybody who's interested. Everybody has to come at least once a year, but if you want to come 12 times a year, you can do that. And so what we're trying to do is get that feeling across the whole company that this is a consistent approach. We also have a monthly feedback session that I run every month to the whole staff. We call it accessibility. I love words. So we have lots of funny little words going on. And that, I started that when I started at the company. We will be running our 200th one, I think, in June. What we have done is nothing special. We have not done anything earth-shattering. All we have done that is different from most of the companies I've spoken to come to talk to me about what we've done is that we do it all the time. It's just about the staff can rely that every single month I'm going to be standing up in front of them, and if I'm not there, Kathy, who's my Chief Operations Officer, will be, and we will tell them what's happening in the business. We shared with them last year, for example, that we were in a divestment process and who we were, and that what we could tell them, we told them so that they weren't nervous and scared about it. We thought they wouldn't be, they still were. But we knew we had communicated and given feedback. We do our Employee of the Month through that. We look at peer pressure and how, and we also are very into recognition rituals. So we have ritualized Employee of the Month because it's something that's very important. It's a peer vote, and we have had it going for years now. So those kind of things are important, and people say why they are voting for their colleagues. That's been very powerful because they have to think about it, and we try and tie it back to our core values, so that they're voting for things that we believe are important. Who gave the best customer service? So it's all about the business and how we run the business effectively. We also have a number of interns. We are very lucky. Our business is around people management. And I'll tell you now, I don't like the term human capital, so we still stick to managing people. And we write software, and one of our software products, our main one, is a payroll system. And we developed a payroll administration diploma and have now developed a degree with the Vinci Institute, actually. And so we've been able to take on interns. So now we have Intern 101. And we even in those courses, all our managers run them. We talk about your social media profile. How do you... things that are relevant. We talk about how we manage language in the workplace so that we don't have exclusion and workplace bullying when people feel that they're being left out. We try and have conversations about everything that makes us uncomfortable in the workplace. And that has created a very, very strong culture in our environment. But having said that, it's something that we have to focus on every day. The moment we don't focus on it for a day or two, there's slippage. So we can't stop concentrating on this. One of the things that I believe in strongly in managing a business and people is that you can't be complacent, that you've got to keep looking at things. And if you fix one small thing every day, even if it's the lock that doesn't work on the ladies' loo, somebody's going to be happy that they can go in and lock the door. Okay, so it doesn't matter how small it is, but to try and constantly be reinventing yourself, to try and, I guess, be the Madonna or the Lady Gaga of the business world. I don't know if there are any men who reinvent themselves. Only think of women.
That was an invitation.
So the other thing that I started again quite a long time ago, and I try and get, and I do, when I don't try, I get to have breakfast with every staff member in our Johannesburg office in a small group every single year. We sit down, we talk it through, whatever it might be. That is how we manage the transformation process, because when I took over Axis, we were 73% white. We are now sitting at 60%, well, 40% white and 60% people of color. And it has been a huge transformational process to go through to be able to share and understand each other's different cultures and try and create a positive working environment. We did it 15 years ago, But we still have to tweak every now and then. We still, again, it's the uncomfortable, fierce conversations that one has to constantly have to make sure that you keep the environment positive. And underlying all of this is that you still have to have a profitable business. Okay.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I read an exit interview the other day where somebody whose contract had expired, because people don't just leave us, their contracts have to expire. Anyway, but, and his comment was, just pay higher salaries and don't concentrate so much on sales. Now, I'm fascinated that somebody would actually... Where does he think the money's coming from? So
there's a disconnect.
Yeah, so it's sometimes a disconnect. So we also, if you're in management, you have to be able to handle conflict. And I think I'm not somebody who enjoys conflict. I don't enjoy confrontation. If I look around the room, how many of you really enjoy it? I had an aunt who loved it. I mean, wherever you went, whether it was a restaurant or a shop, she always managed to have a fight with somebody, and I would duck. But in management, you can't duck. And one of the things that we have tried to also roll out as effectively as possible is not letting things fester. When you wait a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to deal with a problem, and that's why our expectations model is not a twice-a-year thing. In the first 3 months with the company, you should actually have been through 6 expectations in your first 3 months. After that, we slow down to the once or twice a year. But if you're doing it properly, you're not sitting there saying, you did this badly, because by the time you get to expectations, you should already have been feeding back one-on-ones with every staff member. Look, I believe in the Japanese model. You shouldn't have more than 8 people reporting into you. I think in certain instances, we've probably got people with 9 or 10, but we try very hard to keep that number down so that you can spend the time and invest in your people. We're a people management business. How can we not follow that?
Yeah.
I think that everybody knows that saying culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. I believe in that very strongly. I think with the right culture, your strategy is going to be driven through. One of the things I read, and I think which was I enjoyed, if you really want to know how not to run a business, watch The Office. Okay, so I think the other thing, and I don't know how many of you have ever heard Graham Codrington talk on the generational gaps. I mean, I think he's an inspiring speaker. But it's managing different generations, different cultures, different genders is a bit of a minefield for managers. And that's where I think your support system within your business, which is why we find that Management 101 also is very effective, because while we are trying to be as strategic and management-oriented as possible, we also cover operational issues, things that are worrying the managers, things that make them want to not come into work in the day. Because one of the things that we found from Barrett's survey was that one of our best results that people want to come to work. So if you want to come to work, how do you keep that going? The other thing that I think you need to do is you've got to build processes in. I think that Oupa talked about it. I think the words he used were different, but I think if you do land up at the CCMA, if you do land up in a conflict situation, data overlies opinion any day of the week.
No,
so you need to keep data. You need to have the proper systems in place. Obviously, I sell software, so I think that systems are important. I'm an IT person at heart, but it's every single process. And the moment you bypass a process is when it comes back to bite you. So put those structures in place that underpin what you're trying to achieve in your business, which means that when you're managing the small things, you don't have to worry about all of that behind you. And I think that leadership is not something that you can do in a classroom train for 1 week of the year or 2 weeks of the year, send your people off to go and do a course, pay for an MBA. It's got to be part of your business culture, an ongoing scenario that everybody buys into. And when somebody doesn't, no matter how senior they are, it needs to be talked about straight away and say, what you did, you might be in the right, you might have won it, but it wasn't good for the business. And things that aren't good for the business need to be discussed straight away and talked and handled. So managing people, if your clients are engaged, your staff are engaged, your clients are going to treat it well too. People talk about customer-centric organizations. I believe in employee-centric organizations. If your employees are comfortable and happy, your clients are going to be treated that same way. And I think you've got to think about that all the time. You have to listen. Sometimes I really don't want to be honest with you. And sometimes I really do know what they're going to say. And I have to bite my tongue. But you have to listen, and you have to make adjustments that make it work for everybody, even if it doesn't work for you. You know, I used to buy into servant leadership. I'm a little tired of it now. You can see by the hair. But I do think it's an important part of the process is to look at the different types of leadership, understand your leadership skills. And I really, really, really believe that if you're the smartest person in the room as the main leader, you've made a serious mistake in the people you've hired. You've really got to have people who are better than you. And your succession planning, all of those things, it's no good if you're the best. Because then what happens after you're gone? You have to think about that all the time. You've got to keep educating your line management. You've got to keep them involved. You've got to keep them motivated. Line management is hard today. And I think that it's not just about the what we call Man 101 or whatever it might be. It's about I believe in managing by walking around. I think sometimes the staff don't know what I'm doing there, but I do. I walk around all day, and then I go back and I say, I noticed this, I noticed that. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so we do that all the time. I know my staff. I know that yesterday one of my staff became a grandfather. Hoping he's older than me. I know that one of my staff had a break-in the other night. I try and that everybody wants to share things with me. I also know that one of my staff fell off his bed trying to adjust his blinds, had a terrible accident which apparently was awful, but I'm very squeamish and I've asked not to give me the details. But I do know there's a problem. But I don't have a big company. I've got 100 people. When you've got 5,000 people, you've got to build in different types of structures to enable you to do that. And when you're in the public sector, again, and that's why I like that Japanese thing of, I believe, not necessarily in hierarchy, but in manageable numbers. Then brainstorm at all levels and have idea forums. We found the people were very unhappy when I came into the company. It felt a little bit like a black hole. So I put out an idea forum. There was about just over 100 people at the time. And we got around about 100 ideas back. And over a period of about a year, we rolled out about 90 of those ideas. Some of them were, we'd like a staff picnic. Some of them were about, we'd like a canteen. They were different. But after a year, I started to hear that people were saying, but our ideas weren't listened to. So I stood up in front of my staff. Here were the ideas, and we showed them exactly. So I realized that was quite early in this process of realizing that it's not good enough just to roll out the idea. Everybody needs to know you've rolled out the idea. So again, feedback was hugely important, and it created a very positive environment. We also started hanging ideas all over the wall so that people could see which ideas had worked and which hadn't. Gamification. What do you think? I think it's amazing. I think if you can introduce gamification into your workplace and create that kind of involvement at all different levels using those kind of tools that are out there at the moment, again, they can add enormous value. We talk about trust, and I think, again, why would people trust you? I mean, what makes people trust you? And what makes people distrust you? I think that, for me, the sad thing is that you can build up 20 years of trust and blow it in 11 seconds, maybe 9, just by doing something that makes people uncomfortable. So again, it's something that you need to be working on all the time, of keeping those levels right. So I think what I'm going to do now, because just want to face this part of the room for a little bit.
Yeah.
For the last few minutes. Can I do that?
Of course.
Okay. So, BHAGs. Okay. Big, hairy, achievable goals. No, I went. No. So, but if you can make those audacious goals achievable and give people small goals to work on, that they feel they're achieving, the hairy, audacious goals become more achievable. And I think that, Janet, you mentioned purpose. One of the reasons why we put the expectations model into place is we wanted people to see how they fit into the purpose. One of the things I've just introduced, and I'm starting to put it together now, is a visualization of effort. Because, and I think probably you've all heard about Kennedy and the Space Center and the janitor. Anybody not heard about Kennedy, the Space Center, and the janitor?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody heard about it. Everybody wants to understand what their contribution is. So we've just got one of our biggest projects that we've had in a long time. So what we've put together is a model that looks a little bit like this, just simple like this, right down to the guy who distributed the readers down to East London. So we sold a huge amount of readers and access control systems, and what we've done is said, what was the touch point for everybody in the business to create the success of getting that project in, from the salesperson to the consultant who really made a difference to make the client happy, who decided to go with us for the next project. Because people often don't realize the importance of their contribution to the business. And I think that's a really important notion to think about. When people understand their purpose, they start to change the way they work. So they're engaged, they're committed, and they have a purpose. And then you can manage them more easily. The biggest part of management is the people you don't have to manage. So it's the people you do have to manage that you need to try and understand better. If you haven't read Ian Mann's, who's a South African business writer, I love his book Managing with Intent, because it's got 5 pillars around managing people. And one of the most critical ones is around self-image and understanding your self-image. So if I was to tell the guy who sweeps the floors that my car needs cleaning, he'll probably go and wash it. If I tell my secretary that, she will tell somebody else to go and wash it. But I've given the same instruction. So it's around your self-image, about what you're prepared to do. And I think that, again, some of that is very, very important in the way we manage. The other thing is accepting sometimes that not everybody can do everything, and not forcing people into roles that they're not good at. Sometimes design the role around the person's skills and strengths when you can. You can't always do that. But when you can, if somebody's not good at administration, don't make, unless they're salespeople and they have to do their reports on a regular basis. But if somebody is not good at driving administration, but they're really good in front of a client, why make them spend 40% of their time doing administration?
I heard that.
I'd like to just sort of, as a sort of part of finishing this, is retention is not all that it's cracked up to be.
Retention.
Staff retention.
Yeah.
You know, we sit there and we say, 25% retention or 25% loss of staff. Or it's very, very important to keep the key people. But churn in certain parts of your business is inevitable. LinkedIn has added to churn in a way that we will add, and I think we're at the beginning part of LinkedIn and media like that, changing the way we have to manage people. Because the day somebody starts with you, they don't take their profile down. They're still out there talking about that there's a possibility that they might be interested. Headhunters phone, we've had headhunters phone people on their very first day at work.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and offer them double what we've offered them.
Goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you've got to be aware of that. But again, to me, what's important is, if you know that saying, if they're not the right people on the bus, they should get off the bus. We often hang on to warm bodies because it feels so much effort. honestly, the damage that warm bodies do in an environment is unbelievable. And often you only realize how much damage they've done the day after they leave, when everybody says, "Oh, thank goodness they've gone." And you say, "Well, why didn't you tell us?" And they didn't tell you because they thought they'd be seen as a troublemaker or whatever. Some people, even no matter how good they are at their jobs, are not worth keeping. And that is a huge thing. So it's productivity versus negativity. And how do you get that right? And I think that, for me, is a hugely important part of managing people effectively. So, and then, of course, now we're all talking about all the different things in management: agility, agile workers, flexible workers. There's so many different ways of working today. A lot of people are never ever going to work in an office. If you go to your local coffee shop, there are people who work for companies and are sitting there all day having 3 cups of coffee. Fortunately, don't go to Starbucks if you want to do that. Apparently, you have to have at least one. So all of that is part of managing people in the 21st century. I think the key things for me are fairness. You have to be seen to be fair. You have to try and make that fairness the same level of fairness across your management team, because it's no good if 3 people are fair and 1 isn't. You have to try and keep looking at the different ways your different management, the rest of your management team manages, and trying to get a consistency across that. And then, when you really asking your people how they want to be managed. And you can't always do it their way, but you've got to hear it, and you've got to be able to adjust your thinking to the more agile, younger workforce. And let me say that I have in my company, I've got from 18 to 70, well, I think Brian's going to be 71 on the 14th of May. So that's our age range. So we have at every level, and we have to manage each one of them differently. And I'm sure you have the same experience within maybe you don't all have 71-year-olds, but he's just signed the biggest deal of his career. Okay, so at the age of 70. So I'm really pleased I didn't make him retire when he turned 65. So all of those things for me are important. It's about consistency, it's about fairness, it's about being able to build levels of trust with your management team, continuing lifelong learning within your environment, and re-engaging if people leave and want to come back. 40% of the people who leave us ask to come back within 18 months. And we take back quite a few. If they behave badly in their last month, we don't. So I'll finish with that.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sure there are lots of questions. Okay, so I'll leave my question for last. Questions, comments, inputs?
Should I go?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inspiring input. I'm sure we've taken a lot of lessons from it. I just want to find out, how do you cultivate emotional intelligence, amongst your, first of all, the executive, the line managers, and then maybe also the rest of the staff? Because it is my view that all the principles, all the cultures, everything that you have said falls flat in the absence of emotional intelligence of your managers in particular. If I may extend on the example you gave to us, like you believe in management by walking around, how do you then make sure that one of your managers doesn't walk about to realize that somebody's home has been broken into, and then the next minute says, yeah, no wonder they broke into your house, you're so negligent, because of what they failed to do at the workplace.
Sure.
Wow. If one of my managers did that, it'd be big trouble. But I think that,
emotions, how do you prevent it? How do you equip them to make sure that none of them gets to that stage?
By constant input. I check every mail that unique mail that goes out to a client. If I don't see it, and I find out that they've sent one without me seeing it first, there's a query, and I will then go and say, this is what you should have said. So we work on how people, I don't like to lightly use the term spin doctor. I don't think I'm a spin doctor, but I think when I'm talking to people, when I'm putting things in writing, it's important to be sensitive. Political correctness is something that, people are maybe fighting against in certain parts of society right now. I think you've always got to be trying to do minimum damage. And so when you talk to people, that's the same thing you've got to do. So if somebody was to do that, and I can't stop somebody from saying something stupid. I mean, clearly not. I don't have CCTV in anywhere but the kitchen. but the thing really is that if somebody says something like that and it gets reported, we handle it immediately and we use it as a learning experience for everybody. So then the whole management team would have to discuss that and say, what would you have done? What should you have done? It's not necessarily what I would have said, but we really address those issues all the time about being sensitive to other people. It's also about not yelling at people in corridors or in front of other people. Pulling somebody aside into a small meeting room and saying, you've behaved badly. But it's about respect and not humiliation. And that's part of our mantra and our culture. So something like that, if that happened, that would be completely outside of the culture that we do. So emotional intelligence for me, I mean, I don't know if that's the marshmallow test, isn't it? It's how long can you wait till you have the marshmallow? I think I'd probably eat it. I think emotional intelligence is something that different people have in different measures and levels. For me, it's more about sensitivity.
Okay. All right, you've got a hand here.
My question is, how do you define the DNA of an axis brain, and how do you cultivate it? Because I would assume that you don't get somebody who's a perfect match, but you may have programs that help you cultivate that and have somebody who looks, speaks, and smells like your organization.
Well, part of our training program, one of the very first things that everybody has to go on a business etiquette course every year. And so we run that for our new employees immediately. One of the things when people come to Axis is they frequently say, gosh, the ambience when you walk into reception is positive. Would you agree, Teresa? Good. What else could you say? But some of you others have been there, and I think it really is about the warmth. And we do try and we talk about Ubuntu, we talk about that spirit of warmth. It's one of our core values. It has come back to bite me, this one, I have to say. In our monthly meeting last month, there have been a couple of people that I've noticed, because we're walking up and down the corridors all the time, that as they walk past you, they've already greeted you, they look down. I said, no. I don't care if you see me 30 times in a day, just acknowledge me by looking at me when you walk past and acknowledge your peers. So this morning, one of the interns, I was sitting in one of the glass offices and I was working, knocked on the window about 5 times. I looked up, but he wanted to greet me because I've told them they all have to greet me. So as I said, it has come back to bite me, and I'm now thinking, should I tell him? And I thought, no. But it is important. So I share that's what makes me feel comfortable. I want to feel comfortable in my space. I want to feel that people want to see me, and they want to. So that's part of it. Then there's the clients. How do we talk to our clients? How do we make them feel special? Because in a sales environment, you go out and you treat the clients like they're demigods until they sign the order. Then they come in on training and we treat them like students. And so to make people realize how important it is that the clients are treated in a really, that they feel special and important on their first day. So one of the executives, usually me, goes and does an introduction to Axis on every training course. Our staff, new staff, all have to sit through that as well, so they know what we're saying about the company. So there's an ongoing story about the company being shared all the time at all levels with the staff. It doesn't work 100% there.
Fair enough. Okay, you had your hand up, and then I want to ask the students whether The juniors, yes, all right. Over here.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. And I hope the future leaders have taken as many points as I have done, because you really shared with us very pragmatic, practical stuff that we can all benefit from. I certainly like the idea of employee centricity. In my career leadership, it's something that I have not done. I've pushed customer centricity and then built employee centricity, not the other way around. So your approach was quite fascinating. I would have perhaps requested you just talk a little bit about something that is always a challenge: succession planning. How do you manage that in your organization? Secondly, you've given us a very interesting range of having 18 up to 71-year-olds. Managing the millennials, do you find it different to managing the experienced, grayish employees in the organization? How do you find that balance? So, just those two, please.
All right, let's the age range and so on. I'm a mom, I've got my children. My son's actually getting married in 2 months' time, so hopefully I'll be a granny by the time I come and speak to you next. No, I don't think so. But the thing is that I have, some people tell me they've forgotten what it was like to be a teenager. I don't know if I've ever really grown up. So part of that is to try and put yourself in their position and try and understand what they're thinking and how. I'll never be able to do that properly, but I need to understand where they're coming from. I need to understand the importance of what's important to them, in terms of coming to a workplace. I've seen that with our current move into our new office space, where our cafe kind of area is different, is how the connectivity across the age groups has worked differently now, whereas people were quite sitting in their small groups, and now there's a lot more cross-pollination. But I think the most important thing is that it's not about age, and it's not about gender, it's about the person. And if you deal with each person and try and understand where their pain points and where their passion points are, you are then able to deal with them. And that's why, again, I go back to that. You cannot effectively manage 100 people or 20 people. You can manage a smaller group, because then you can understand them better. Just tell me what you really were asking in the first point.
Yeah, the issue of succession planning.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Yes. I think it's not easy to succession plan, as we have seen in all sorts of different corporates and public and private sector. But to give you an example of what I did a few months ago, well, about 6 months ago, my chief operations officer was managing the internal operations of the business, and she was managing our coastal branches. I was managing, the heads of finance, the head of HR, the heads of development. So I swapped our roles around. I went back into sales and marketing, and I put Kathy in charge of finance, HR, and development. I wish I'd done it long ago. But immediately now, that has given her a broader picture of the business. Now the person underneath her is going to be managing the sales and marketing side, so what we try and do is cross-train at a senior level. I think it's difficult to do in many environments, particularly when you've got professional skills. For example, if your next person up is going to be the financial director, is going to become the CEO. But I don't think a financial director should become a CEO without some exposure to sales, marketing, and service.
Right.
Yeah.
So they need to be. It's like I will go and sit at reception every now and then. I will go and sit in the services department and take phone calls. I will sit in sales and put together scripts for the salespeople to work from, because you need to be involved in every different aspect of the business to run a business.
Yeah.
Running a business is a generalist role.
So multidisciplinary
yes.
role. Yeah.
So if you want, so that's one level of succession. But in all the other layers, we have succession plans in place where we can. Where we can't, because we can't afford to have 200 people where 100 are sitting in the wings. But we try and train, and we also keep quite deep recruitment records that we can go back to people who've worked for us before and so on if we need to.
Thank you.
Okay, just hang on.
I just want to ask one question. What impact will it have on the business if the manager can't manage it himself? What impact will it have on the business if a manager can't manage himself?
You mean like there's a conflict of personality? Or, you know, it's very difficult. And sometimes that lands up being very unpleasant. Like it can almost land up in a workplace bullying scenario when you cannot manage. That's what HR departments are for in bigger businesses. When a manager can't manage a particular employee, there needs to be an intervention. And you need to decide and discuss why it's not working. Sometimes the manager could be threatened by the employee. Sometimes the employee just is not working. So it can be from either side. Sometimes the manager needs training. Sometimes the employee needs a reality check. But you need to go into an intervention when something like that happens.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, was a hand here?
Yeah.
And
Sorry,
then over
gentlemen.
here, sorry.
I'm going to
You want to follow up
pick up
on
on
that?
that
Yeah,
question.
sure.
Yes, in spite of all you've said and done in the company, do you find you still have disciplinary problems that could lead to dismissal?
One of the things that I really dislike is if you're going to run a disciplinary, one of your outcomes has to be dismissal. Because there's no, to me, otherwise you should be counselling. To me, you counsel until you say, I'm
Can't
done.
anymore.
I need to, because I think disciplinaries are hugely demotivating for both sides. Not to say we don't have them, but it doesn't mean that the outcome is dismissal, but I think you must be prepared for dismissal if you go into a disciplinary. Otherwise, why are you not counselling and mentoring and coaching and showing the way forward? I think we sometimes win the battle and lose the war in those kind of scenarios,
Right.
because you lose that person now is much less likely to be engaged with the company because they feel the process has been a negative one. It doesn't mean that you never have to do them. I think you do have to do them. I just think they're a very sad part of, it's a failure on part of management as well as the employee when you have to go to disciplinary.
I hold a different view.
Do you? There you go.
All right, we had a hand here and then over there. Yes.
So, just from my point of view, obviously, or I assume that the gender issue does play some role in your approach to your leadership style. So, on the reverse side, if you had to be in a male-dominated organization, and you mentioned specifically that it starts from the top, you lead by example, how would you deal with that kind of challenge?
Well, you know, you've got to realize that I mean, as a programmer, my whole career, I was the first and only female president, as far as I know, of the Information Technology Association when we started the SETA back in the day. So, and it started in 1938. So when I became president in 2002, and it's now 2018, and as far as I'm aware, still the only female president. So I have been in all male environments my whole career. Do I think that my management and leadership style is because I'm a woman? No, I don't agree. But I think that I am a woman. So I think it was Sandra Day O'Connor who said, I think I make, you know, when she got to the Supreme Court, she said that it wasn't her gender that made the decisions, it was her brain. And I think that is really, or words to that effect. So I think that, I do think that women manage differently. In some areas, I have tried very hard not to let it dominate my thinking. However, it is really important to me. And I've got quite I mean, if you look at the management team at Access at the moment, it's quite mixed in terms of, in fact, I think at the moment, I think it's pretty much the half and half on the ExCo. But it's been different over the years. The difference for me is that when we are hiring, when we are promoting, we don't have the gender bias when we're promoting. So we believe that women are as good as men. That means that we promote as many women as we do men. So we don't promote more women than we promote men, but we promote as many. And that, for me, has probably been a difference in the way that the business has run.
Yeah, you've taken my question. Now, we have a last question to me. I don't think we'll have time for yours as well, but you have the privilege.
Why should people be managed and not be led?
Good question.
Well, you know, the thing is that it is words, and I think, I can't remember his name now, it's David somebody who said, if you want to, if you think people are things, you can manage them, you manage things and you lead people. So I do think that there are probably 5% of people who need to be managed and 95% can be led. Unfortunately, most companies do all their processes around the 5% rather than around the 95%. So at all the companies I've worked in the last 20 years, we talked about senior leadership rather than management. But because of the way that TT100 has done it, its management of people, is I think that the word was used quite significantly. But certainly for me, leadership. And I also believe in parallel pathing. I don't also believe that everybody needs to be a manager to be on a senior sort of trajectory.
Yeah.
So I think that people should be led. Mr. Mandela said lead from the back and from the front. So I think you've got to do both. You've got to lead by example. You've got to manage the problems. And sometimes the problems are people.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we can conclude with that because, in fact, we and you will know, we make use of the term managerial leadership, and it's for that very reason that we use it, because we believe that it's not only about management and it's not only about leadership, but that the one cannot be without the other. And so, on that note, let's end it there. And thank you very much.